Hockey Show is brought to you by Johnston Group, Vittorio Rossi, Trans-Canada Brewing, Lou Ferlin, Cambrian Credit Union, and Homefield.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe. Ken Wiebe, that's his name. Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Together we are Kenny and Renny. I got that part right. Together we're Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after a game that, did you really think it was going to be that easy? Did you really think it was going to be the Winnipeg Jets just dominating every single period through this series, and then the next one, and then the next one? 16 straight games to hoisting the Stanley Cup on home ice because they would be the lower seed. That's not the way it works. That's never the way it was going to work. There was going to be pushback at some point, and we saw that here tonight. Now, sure looked like the Winnipeg Jets had an opportunity to maybe run the Vegas Golden Knights out of this series. I'm a believer in that possibility. I mean, had they continued to do in the first period what they did in the second period, and of course the first period was a continuation of what they'd been able to do in the previous three periods, I think that the hope or the belief that the Vegas Golden Knights would have been potentially snuffed out in two games like this. I don't want to get too crazy with this here because we're talking about a team that has Alec Martinez on it. We're talking about a team that has Pietrangelo on it. These are Stanley Cup winners. These are guys who know what it takes to get things done in the playoffs. These are guys who've been through 7-game wars on the way to winning their Stanley Cups. These are guys who had big goals and big plays on the way to that. I will say this. I was in the Vegas Golden Knights practice rink earlier on today. It was an optional skate, and Alex Pietrangelo came out in nothing but skates and shorts and a backwards hat and his hockey gloves and a shirt and was firing pucks around. I mean, if that doesn't tell you that someone is loose and not panicking, I don't know what does. All the signs were there for the Vegas Golden Knights to handle this properly and come back in this game and get to their game. Didn't think it was going to happen at one point after that first period. I thought the Jets had an opportunity to break them. And so I guess the question has to become, if the Jets had a missed opportunity here tonight to kind of, not drive the stake through the heart, but, get the stake in place and take that first solid whack with the hammer on that stake. The question has to become that second period and the importance of that second period, because you have to ask yourself, did the Vegas Golden Knights get back into this because the Winnipeg Jets allowed, a crack in the door for them to get back into this? Or was this the Vegas Golden Knights just finally arriving in this series? If you talk to Rick Bowness, which we did after the game, he's a believer in the former. He thinks that the Winnipeg Jets let the Vegas Golden Knights off the mat in this game. And that's a result of what we saw. But you know what? Every team is going to say that. Listen, all of you watched what I watched in the first game with the Winnipeg Jets, where I thought they were absolutely dominant. I thought they got to their game. I thought they played well. But if you talk to the Vegas Golden Knights, they'll tell you they didn't show up. That wasn't the Winnipeg Jets being a really good hockey team. That was us not being a very good hockey team. So that's essentially what Rick Bowness was saying about the Winnipeg Jets, is that they stopped playing good hockey in the second period and in the third period. In both cases, I think the truth usually lies somewhere in the middle. I thought the Jets were dominant in the first game, and I think that even if the Vegas Golden Knights had been at the top of their game, they would have the Jets would have come away with that victory. I didn't think the Jets were going to be denied in that first game, but all that said, I don't think the Vegas Golden Knights came anywhere near with their best in that first game. And I think what you saw in periods 2 and 3, that's the Vegas Golden Knights getting closer to what they do really well. And the thing about that is they started to do to the Winnipeg Jets what the Winnipeg Jets had been doing to the Vegas Golden Knights up to that point in the series, forcing them to turn pucks over. When the Winnipeg Jets did get pucks in their own zone, started to be that they were putting it off the boards. There was a couple times you'll notice Jets defensemen put the puck off the boards, and then it ended up out. It didn't end up being a penalty, but I just thought that was a sign that the Jets were just using the boards to relieve pressure, get it out into the neutral zone, which is a giveaway, right? When the Jets play their best, what they do is the opposing team, they pressure them, then they get the puck back and they just flip it back to the Jets in the neutral zone because it's the only play they have. Well, that's what started to happen to the game as the Jets went on. And it's interesting because Rick Bowness talked about in some of those goals down in the zone, the idea that the Jets, coughed the puck up. Well, they coughed the puck up because the Vegas Golden Knights finally got their pressure. This wasn't the Jets just turning around and throwing the puck away carelessly. The Jets' mistakes on this night ended up happening because Vegas got the pressure that I think we were all expecting from Vegas at some point in this series. To be honest, I was expecting it right out of the gate. But it's an interesting conversation to be had now, because I know there's a lot of people who are in the chat room and they are going to say, Jets took one of two games. They've got home ice advantage. Those are all very good points, right? This is something that needs to be taken away from this. It's interesting. I had a conversation with Hustler earlier on today because we were thinking of doing, it's Vegas. I don't want to be that guy, right, who's constantly doing gambling. I know people feel bombarded by gambling commercials when they're watching sports, so I don't want to do that. I thought it was fun, though, to play on the idea of Vegas. And one thing we wanted to do today, we didn't get to because the game just kind of took on a life of its own, but was the idea that going into game one of the series, we were talking about how Vegas, the Vegas line, Vegas as in the gambling institution, believed in the Vegas Golden Knights. Well, it took that first Jets win and the belief entirely flip-flopped in this series, and the Vegas line turned in the favor of the Jets. And the expectation is that even after that game, even after Vegas wins it 5-2, the Vegas line will still be suggesting that the Winnipeg Jets are the favorite in this series going forward. And the reason for that is because they have a home ice advantage now. So if you're the Jets, you walk in here, you take one game, you take home ice advantage. That's usually about, not the most you can expect in a series, but you should be very happy with that. But I do feel that it may be a little harder for the Winnipeg Jets to feel happy about what happened down here in Vegas, because like I said, I do think there's a lost opportunity here. I think there was a chance to have your foot on the throat of your opponent, and the Jets have let that opponent up off the mat. And it's not just that. It's the idea of how the Vegas Golden Knights got off the mat. I can tell you this. I think that you can take a look at a player like Mark Stone. When he scores, the reaction that he has, and let's keep in mind, he's a Winnipeg boy. I know he's playing for the team that a lot of you want to see perish a horrible death down the stretch here. But he's a Winnipeg boy. He's a product of Winnipeg that people should be absolutely proud of. And one thing about Mark Stone is that when he gets into the fight and scores goals, I think he really drags his team into it. Losing tonight is bad enough for the Winnipeg Jets, but the fact that Mark Stone woke up, the fact that Mark Stone, who we had a question of whether or not he would ever get up to speed in this series, we had that question. Him going the way he was going, him reacting the way he was going, Jack Eichel playing the way that he did in the second period, and to be completely honest and give credit where it's due, Gary Lawless, everybody, look at this, hopping in here, Winnipeg contingent. Gotta love this
show. Is that what's going on here?
That's what I love, that you put Renny first, because usually Kenny demanded in his contract.
Second.
Yeah, right. Good to see you. How's that for a pop in on the Kenny and Renny show? That's some good stuff right there. Lost my train of thought. I'll get back to it right now. Jack Eichel, I thought, woke up in that second period. Interesting conversation with Bruce Cassidy before the game about Jack Eichel. I don't think anyone was very happy with his performance in game one. It was his first time playing a playoff game, and it didn't look good. I think he was -3 or something like that. And there was a belief that Jack Eichel really wasn't doing the things that you need to do to succeed in the playoffs. Tonight, he seemed to find that. In that second period, I thought Jack Eichel started kind of taking over and There's two different kinds of Jack Eichel, and I think that there can be a little bit of parallels drawn. Winnipeg Jets fans will have seen this with Mark Scheifele before. There's a time where, and I don't necessarily think it's a disinterest from these players, but the style of play that they have when they're not playing at the top of their game, they can look slightly, if not largely, disengaged when things aren't going well for them. I thought for the most part, Jack Eichel looked disengaged in that first game, first 4 periods. He looked engaged starting in that second. And now all of a sudden, the biggest issue that you have going here with the Winnipeg Jets as it stands is the horses that were sleeping, that you wanted to see continue sleeping, have woken up in this series. And that most definitely can be problematic for the Winnipeg Jets going down the stretch here. The question becomes now, can they bounce back? I would love to get into that, but I don't necessarily need to do it all on my own. No, Kenny is not here right now, but we are adding in the flute, who of course has, I think, maybe the music that is most fitting for this time, because we have to get to Adam Lowry and talk about Adam Lowry. But we all know that the flute and Adam Lowry share at least one thing in common, in that they absolutely love the same kind of music. And here's a good explanation of that music here in the entrance video to one Scotty the Flute Billick. Here he comes, everybody. This is what we call Snowstorm. Scotty, it's been too long since we heard that music, and I could tell that the chat room feels exactly the same way. Lynn Reimers, exclamation points, the flute, and Jeff Cabilles, who I know always loves him some Scott Billick. Seriously, by God, it's the flute. I love
that's the best.
Scott, let's get right down to it. What did you see in this game?
I mean, I've been getting some backlash on Twitter about this. I thought the Jets were in complete control in that first period. You're in the building there. I think you would probably tend to agree. But it started to change, and to me, it started to change. That 4-on-3 was bad, and I think, but I don't even know if it changed there. It just, Vegas looked like a different team in that second period. They got into the zone. They started cycling the puck a little bit down low, and in turn, they're generating some zone time, which they really haven't had a lot of in this series, right? And so, you know, they're starting to get confidence, and the Jets are starting to, play. To me, when they were playing in that second period, it almost felt like they were playing, as if they were like trying to chase the game, right? They were trying to cheat a little bit for offense, and and that led to poor puck management, a little disjointed. Like, they started to get away from the game that they had played for the first 4 periods of the series. And so, and we knew coming into this game, like, this team has its demons, right? And in professional sports, your demons are never too far from you. And I thought they started to rear their heads a little bit in this, in starting in the second period. And to me, I think that the biggest thing that I saw, like, the Chandler Stevenson goal, like, that stick needs to get tied up by Mark Scheifele there. And to me, like, that's not the Mark Scheifele we saw in the first game. And or even down a little bit of the last stretch, the 5, 6, 7 games of the regular season. That wasn't the Mark Scheifele. And so there was just some missed coverages, and just it looked a little too lazy. It wasn't tight enough, right? It wasn't tight enough for a playoff game. We saw the blueprint in game 1, and that was tight checking hockey. The gaps were good. Everything was really good in that game, outside of maybe that Carlson goal, which was a bit of a mix-up in game 1. But yeah, I just saw I saw a Vegas team that started to play like Vegas, right? Like, and I don't know if that's what completely changed the game, because I thought the Jets started to play like they were playing earlier in the season when we were really questioning, like, can this team win games like this, especially come this time? And we found out tonight that they can't. And I think that's where I'm at on it.
The one thing that I thought was interesting about this, and the one question that we've had, people in our last show, we were talking about the Jets' potential for to be consistent down the stretch here. I know that the consistency or lack of consistency is probably the result of this, but I'd wondered what would happen with the Jets when they kind of got put to the test, right? So here's the one thing that I see that kind of fascinates me about these Winnipeg Jets is when they get rolling, they look like they're unstoppable, right? Like I was joking with the audience when I first started, like you didn't really think the Jets were going to win, three straight periods, 12 straight periods to sweep this team, and then the same thing in the next round, all the way to winning the Stanley Cup in 4 games, and they were just going to dominate their way all the way through. But there is something about this Winnipeg Jets, and we've touched on it. I mean, I touched on it in the show before the Toronto Maple Leafs game with Ron McLean and the crew there. The idea that there's always been this belief around this Winnipeg Jets core that they're capable of doing something special, right? And what we saw in the first game of this series is exactly that. What we saw in the first period is exactly that. I'm just so blown away and have been for a long time. And it's funny that it still blows you away when all of a sudden in a game like this, they look like they have complete and total control and they're not letting the other team play in the game. And then all of a sudden it turns and it switches, and what they've been doing to the other team, they have done to them. What is it with this team, Scott, that they can be so very scalding hot and then go absolutely ice cold, and they'll do it? I mean, I think this season is a perfect example of them being able to, for an extensive period of time, be red hot, and then for an extensive period of time be ice cold. But we've seen it in game before, and we most definitely saw it here tonight. The Winnipeg Jets looked unstoppable in the first period, and my take on this before you hopped on was I don't think that the Jets were that far from entirely breaking the Vegas Golden Knights' belief that they could win this series. And then all of a sudden the Vegas Golden Knights turn around and pump the Winnipeg Jets in the last 2 periods of this hockey game, and now should have all kinds of belief going forward. How do you get from that hot to that cold, not only in a season, but in a game?
Well, and Craig Zamzow has it, and the word I was thinking of was brittle. He's got fragility. I think with this team, and we've seen it, right? They get on this stretch of winning late in the season, right? After it went so horribly bad, and they really had to find themselves over 2 months. It took a long time, right? But they get on this winning, streak or whatever. They win 5 of 6 to close out the year. Game 82 means nothing. It didn't matter if they won or lost, and they played half the team. So I don't even look at that game. But the winning feeling reinforces the structure of this team, right? And when they're winning and they were beating those teams pretty handily, in my opinion, down the stretch there. In game 1, they beat Vegas pretty handily. This game, it's 1-0 after the first, but I think you're probably thinking it should have been 3-0, maybe 3-1. You got to give that should have been goal. That Hellebuck that robbed.
No doubt.
Goal.
Yeah. If you're going to say the Jets got robbed, then you have to say
right. Of course, 100%. So it should have probably been 3-1. But I think what was if there was a question that you still had to ask yourself heading into game 2, I don't know what it would be, but for me it was what happens when this team actually hits a little bit of adversity, right? And so they went down 2-1, and I thought they did a good job actually, kind of rebounding from that a little bit. I mean, the Stenman goal, gets them back into it. But I think the problem on the night is that you had your first line and your second line that probably didn't really show up the way that you needed them to, and the way that they did. And I mean, I'm not taking away from Kyle Connor's 8 shots in what was the first period. I mean, he had a great period, but again, you're not scoring. And so I think this team has a brittleness about it at times when there's a frustration that creeps in a lot quicker for this team than it does for, say, Vegas, right? I think Vegas came into this, they handled that first period tonight. They handled game 1 well. I mean, when you look at it now in kind of hindsight, they know how to handle this sort of thing. I'm not sure that the Jets still understand how to handle critical points of adversity in the game. And I think you saw it tonight. You get down 2-1. Yeah, you came back, but you're still not playing a game. And that third period, I mean, you're really playing a game that doesn't look anything like the shutdown hockey or anything like a game where you're still tied 2-2. Like, I tweeted out at one point, like, somebody needs to remind the Jets that it's still a tie game, right? Like, they don't have to be trying to get cute with it. They don't have to be trying to do a lot of those things. But I think that's the problem. This team, I don't know, and whenever it happens, like when they have a patch of or a mental lapse or whatever it is on the ice, they revert back to a style of hockey that's just so not conducive to winning. And I think that's the problem. Like, I don't know how to explain it though. Like, I don't know if it's just like a mental barrier that they have to deal with. If it's they get down on themselves at certain times. Like, I don't know what it is, and I'm not sure we're ever going to really know. Maybe at the end of the season, whatever happens. But they seem to struggle with. I don't know. It's not even struggling with success because they're good at it, but they struggle in that in between, right, where it's not kind of clear cut for them. And I thought tonight, Vegas showed that they had some fight back in that second period and right into the third, and I don't think the Jets handled it well. And it didn't seem like they were prepared for Vegas to play the game that they played over those final two periods, and maybe that's it. So. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm going to throw a couple theories, and let's examine these two theories. So first, one thing I've wondered, and I remember I used to wonder about this sometimes with Paul Maurice, and the idea of having a skilled team. So I think that we could agree that what has made the Jets successful down the stretch is what we refer to as the Rick Bowness blueprint, right? The Rick Bowness blueprint is a grind. Right? It asks of its players to constantly buzz and forecheck and pick up the puck, throw it to the point, right? Rick wants his offense coming from the point, and in order to do that, you have to go to the front of the net where it's tough and it's a grind, and you have to finish your checks. You have to get in your opposition's face. And I've always wondered, you take a look at a team like the Minnesota Wild. The Minnesota Wild is a roster built to grind, right? Yeah. I don't think there's any question that anyone out there thinks, other than a Kaprizov, that roster in Minnesota has anywhere near the skill that the Winnipeg Jets roster has, right? So that team is built to grind. That team of a general manager has gone out with the express purpose of putting that together to have that identity, and they are going to go out and they are going to make your lives miserable every shift, every period, every game for 82 games, and then they're going to go into the playoffs and do it. Now, I don't want to hold them up as a paragon of success, because we know that the Minnesota Wild haven't had a lot of playoff success. The point is, this is a team that is designed to do something. So if you want to go out and you need to rip logs apart with a maul, the Minnesota Wild are a maul that you use for that. The Winnipeg Jets down the stretch, what we've seen from them here, when they've succeeded, it's the Rick Bowness blueprint, and that blueprint requires the Jets to play a grind. It's a grind to do that. And the argument at times is, I think down the stretch, why down the stretch, Adam Lowry has probably been the Winnipeg Jets' biggest star as their game turned to the grind and they started really pounding on teams. Adam Lowry has become the biggest star on this Winnipeg Jets team down the stretch in the playoffs. And the reason for that is because Adam Lowry is built for the grind. You could take him and take Marcus Foligno off the roster of the Minnesota Wild and plunk Adam Lowry in his spot, and nothing would change. You would have the same kind of player that worked there. And so, we're talking about the idea of the Winnipeg Jets and how sometimes it works and then it just falls off. And I wonder if the Winnipeg Jets team that looks like it's built more like a Ferrari, and you don't want to be taking Ferrari up into the mountain roads that are bumpy. And I think every once in a while the Jets can go and they can get into that style. But I just wonder if the grind either wears on them, either physically or mentally. But if the players being asked to play the grind who don't necessarily fit the grind game end up moving away from that grind, if that's the case, I think we'd have to examine and find examples of it happening in this game. That's one way to look at it. The other side of this is a little bit greasier, a little bit stankier. And that would be the idea that this team falling in love with its press clippings and its accomplishments, right?
Sure.
And I think we've thought, this is the other kind of idea I'd have with this, that every once in a while we walked away from that game one with the Winnipeg Jets and just thought to ourselves, absolutely. And I think that this has been the case with the Winnipeg Jets for a long time. I think what happened to the Winnipeg Jets in 2018, Scott, is the worst thing that could happen to them was the very first period of that series against the Vegas Golden Knights. They lit them up. Fleury let in some bad goals. The whiteout was happening. Everyone was celebrating. And I think the Winnipeg Jets, after going through a grind, after going through that grind with the Predators, looked and thought to themselves, these guys are a cakewalk. We're going to walk through these guys. And then I think they let their guard down. And then I think Vegas got up and Vegas just kept going. And so my other theory and I don't know which I think it is, and maybe both these theories are wrong, but I wonder about the idea of, we just talked about Pierre-Luc Dubois after last game, and he absolutely arrived. And we talked about Mark Scheifele going to the wing, and that line was absolutely unstoppable. We had queued up stats to talk about how badly they doused their opponents since they got together, and then they got doused on this night. And I just wonder if there was a feeling with the Winnipeg Jets, especially after, and this brings back to me shades of 2018, that first period against the Vegas Golden Knights, after pumping the Vegas Golden Knights in game one and then coming out and dominating them in game one tonight. I wonder if there was a feeling after that first period in the Winnipeg Jets' minds that they had arrived, and then they sagged and they left the door open, and the Vegas Golden Knights went charging through.
Yeah, it's super interesting, because I thought a little bit of the same too. My take on it is that, this team's identity, like you talked about early on about Minnesota, and they have this specific identity, and that's what they lean on. They know how to play it. I think the Jets have an identity that they know that they can play, but they don't always play that to that identity. I thought they did during game one, but it's almost like when they can't play to that identity, they revert back to something that, maybe 2018, maybe 2019, the last half of the 2019 season, maybe that stretch starting in Montreal earlier this season, where you're just trying to win games by being the Ferrari in the drag race, right? Hoping that you can kind of win. But, it's an interesting point. And I do wonder, because, you look back at both game ones, and I was doing this just, my own research, and, you're right. It's almost like, you got the best of the better goalie that night in the series, at least. And it creates a little bit of false confidence in a team that can't really afford to, the Jets need to identify what's real and what's fake confidence, right? Like, they have to. But it just seems so surprising. Like, if that's the issue, I mean, yikes, we're 5 years on from 2018. You gotta learn, and you would think that, if nothing else, with this coaching staff, because I think this coaching staff has been hyper aware of what goes on between the ears of this team, right? But when it was really thick at one point in that losing streak,
it's okay. It's okay.
When it was really thick, people are always hesitant. They're like, "Oh, you're on cam." But I think when the Jets were in the thick of it and of the losing streak this season, Rick Bowness was kind of throwing his hands in the air, because he couldn't find a way to reach this team. And I just wonder, I don't know. He said the thing, we had their chances. They had their chances. I agree. The team had the chance. I was looking up the analytics, and I don't think they were heavily in favor. They were. The Jets, over the final two periods, it was really bad, and that's something that was really evident of why the Jets won game one. But I don't know. I think this team struggles it's weird to say. I think this team struggles at times with its own success, right? And whether it is the press clippings or just the false floor that it creates for them in their own game, it is weird. I mean, I don't really have a different rebuttal to that because I think it's kind of evident. I mean, I think we've seen this time and time again from this team that they struggle to kind of they struggle to. It's almost like they struggle with the highs and the lows, right? Like
Yes.
they struggle with getting too high, and when it gets really bad, they also get too low. And they'll tell you, as they tell us all the time, well, it's not as bad as you say it is. But I mean, I think the results in at times speak for themselves. I thought I don't know. I mean, I thought it was odd in this game because it's just like it went from Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde so quickly, and that's just a bad sign in my opinion. I mean, yeah, is it just a bad game? Could you look at the Vegas game and think, well, who were those Vegas Golden Knights? Because I think there was a lot of people in Vegas wondering who the hell that team was in Game 1 too, right? So maybe it's just that. We'll see what happens on Saturday. But yeah, I do. I agree. Like this team has that, and I think the highs and lows for this team are too high and too low for what you would want. I don't want to say a competent team. I think this team is competent, but for a contending, kind of hockey club, I suppose.
We should get to some stuff before we go on here. I have to say, when I was doing the GM meeting, Scott, earlier this year, I wore this jacket, and David Poyle commented on the jacket and was like raving about it. And then tonight, when I interviewed Jack Eichel stepped into the interview and before the camera started, stopped and said, "Hey man, that's a really nice jacket." And I said, "You know what you should do, Jack? You should head on down to Corridon Avenue and go see Frankie and the boys at Vittorio Rossi because they'll do you up right. You know what to do. Head on down there." I told him, "You're going to be in Winnipeg anyway, so do yourself a favor. Head on down, see Frankie and the boys at Vittorio Rossi. Tell him Kenny and Renny sent you." I hope he does it. I will say this. Everyone knows Renny is susceptible to compliments, and I was susceptible to that compliment on this night as well. So head on down to Vittorio Rossi, everybody. Make sure you tell him that Kenny and Renny sent you. Scotty, give me your lamplighter on the evening.
Oh, that's a good question. Jack Eichel's goal, I think. I mean, that's just such a nice deflection. Like, it is a beautiful deflected shot. Like, it couldn't be any better than that. He puts the stick in there, and he knows, like, maybe it's just part of the celebration too, but he knows as soon as he hit it, like, that thing was going in. It was almost like he walked away from the putt that he knew was going in. It probably doesn't look like that in the camera, but I'm just watching the goal. He hits it, then he goes to the fans. He's got his hands up. He's doing the whole like this. It was a beautiful tip, and I think a lot of deflections. I mean, we think of guys like Joe Pavelski and these guys that are really, really good at net front deflections. I thought that was just like a perfectly skilled, I know what I'm doing, walk off kind of deflection. I thought that was, if I'm picking a goal, for me that's the one because one, it puts Vegas in the driver's seat, but two, I marvel at some of those deflected goals because some guys are so good at it, and I think Jack Eichel made a really nice one there.
I think he absolutely nailed it there, Scotty. I'm not going to argue with it. But hey, you may want to argue it if you're watching right now. And if you'd like to, we encourage you to do so, because if you disagree with Scott or agree with him, either way, if you give us your lamplighter of the game, you are automatically entered to win a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. If you can't wait for Kenny and Renny, or Scotty in this case, to send you your own 8-pack of frosty, delicious Lamplighter Amber Ale, head on down to TransCanada Brewing Company. Join them in their tap room at 11290 Kenneson Avenue, where many of you will be joining us, including Scotty, at the Kenny and Renny Year-Ender Bender. It's going to be an absolutely great time. I know some people are still reaching out. We've got the reserve list going on. If you want to join the reserve list for the opportunity to get tickets, should the people ahead of you in line pass on theirs, you know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your name and something to get a hold of you with, a contact number, phone number, email, whatever it is. And if a spot opens up, you'll be getting a call from Renny. I may show up on your door with like like a fake check or something like that, and it'll be just a big giant ticket to the year-ender bender. So make sure you direct message me if you'd like to be on that list. And I want to give a shout out to Brian Hallett, I think it's Hallett, who is the winner from last show, the first playoff game, the first playoff show of the year. Brian Hallett, you have won the 8-pack of Frosty Delicious Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at Transcanada Brewing Company. So you know what to do. Direct message me, send me your full name, and send me some way I can get a hold of you and send you your voucher for a Frosty Delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale. Congratulations to you. You are on the clock. You know what? I know Ken's waiting, but I feel like torturing Ken a little bit. So I want you to go with the Got You Covered play of the game, brought to you by the Kenny and Renny OGs at the Johnston Group.
Oh, that's a good one.
Scott, it's obvious.
Is it Connor Hall save?
Yeah, of course it is. Of course.
I mean, well, so here's the thing. Like, that happens.
Yeah,
so
I thought I was showing you a
game.
softball. I thought I was making it easy. I know you're tired. It's after midnight there.
I'm overthinking it, Johnny. I'm overthinking it because I'm like, okay, that was a 0-0 game at the time, right? I would almost, and I was, it was that, but also the 95-mile-an-hour one-timer Jack Eichel off the mask. Like, that's a close second, because one's a great save, and one's just like, holy crap, there's nothing I can do. I'm getting it square in the face. And he took it square in the face. I know I'm going to get shit for, not shit, you know what I I mean?
It's okay.
Flack for it, but
Kenny and Renny after dark.
This is after midnight, at least here in Manitoba. So, yeah, so that's, I know it's a softball, but I really did like the Hellebuck save off the mask too, because it's just like, there's nothing you can do, square in the face, cut him. And it harkened a little bit back to the whole Morgan Barron thing. But yes, I mean, you're right. I mean, the save off the line, and you watch the save, and you can't even say that it was potentially a goal, because you can see where the puck is in the webbing. It never actually crossed the line. Like that's the coolest part about being able to see that, is that you can't say it wasn't, it wouldn't have been a save or whatever. Like, it was, if the guy's webbing was different or whatever, like it was a great save, and he legitimately kept it out of the net. And all the Vegas guys are kind of like pointing, that's a goal. Hellebuck's sitting there with his glove, like doing this because the puck's in there. He's trying to show the ref. Yeah, like it was a cool moment. So yeah,
no doubt. You know what? I think Kenny's timeout has landed long enough. Someone already said nobody puts Kenny in the corner. Renny does. When Renny wants to, he's got the power on this platform to do exactly that. He just did that. But I want to bring in Ken and give him an argument, or an opportunity to argue with you. Ken, I'm bringing you in. Scotty went in a couple
Where's
different
the song?
directions.
What's
He's
happening
kind of waffling. Yeah, the song. Ken, get out of here. You're out of here. You're out of here. Ken's out of here. Let's bring in the man with the best music in the business. Here comes Kenny. Kenny, as you can see from the chat room, I may just be the only person in the Kenny and Renny universe who would make the mistake of not playing your music before bringing you into the show. An absolutely huge error on my part.
Supposed to be in playoff form here, man. It's supposed to be in playoff form.
No doubt. Hey, it's Vegas. Vegas is getting to me. My mind's in a bunch of different spots.
It's all that network time. Hey, all that network time swelling the ego here.
Let's be honest. I'm better than everybody now that I'm on the network. Jack Eichel gave me a shout out for the jacket. That makes me better than people too. I'm too good to play your music from now on. So you're gonna have to play.
Sean's highs are getting too high
on your own.
That's the problem. Your highs are too high.
I'm like the Winnipeg Jets. The highs are getting far too high for me. So let's
lap coming
there. Ken, I just want you to finish up your Johnston Group got you covered play of the game. Is it obvious? Is it very, very obvious?
Yeah, I mean, the Eichel. For me, the Eichel goal was the prettiest, but I'm actually
no, not Lamplighter.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Got
you covered is Chandler Stevenson one-timer.
Now who deserves the wake up, people? Now who deserves the wake up?
Well, I just would like to actually do the segments that I normally do on the show. That's all.
Show up for the show.
Fine.
It's the Chandler Stevenson one-timer that Hellebuck scoots across on. I know you got the great replay on TV where it didn't fully go across. Like, no, Eichel passed it to Stevenson.
No, it was Eichel's one-timer. Are you talking about the one in the mask?
No, buddy, not the mask. No, the one before that on the power play.
Yes.
I mean, the mask is a nice one also. But the one-timer on the power play just before the face-off that led to the shot to the head is the got you covered. I mean, the mask has him covered as well for sure. But yeah, I mean, that save is ridiculous. So that's what we're going with for the Johnston Group. And although I love Scotty's selection and I loved Eichel's goal because... I mean, it was the topic of conversation. Sean, I know you were on with our buddy Jeff Merrick today on the Merrick Show. When I was on in the afternoon with Kipper and Bourne, and all the questions about Eichel. Where's Eichel? Where's Eichel? In his first playoff game, he had 10 shot attempts and 2 shots on goal, but was on for 3 goals against. Today, I think he made it quite clear that his goal got him fired up and the others. But for me, the lamplighter would have been the Mark Stone first goal, mostly for the celebration after, Sean. I mean, that was like a Game 7 special. We know that he's the emotional leader on this team. And Mark Stone, in just his second game back, was absolutely outstanding for the Vegas Golden Knights. So honorable mention to Kevin Stenlund. That backhand redirection is absolutely really nice. High-end. Nice play by Menelainen and a really good finish by Stenlund. For his second career playoff goal. He had one as a member of the Columbus Blue Jackets, folks, for those of you who were wondering why there wasn't a big celebration. That's correct. Craig Zamzo has got me pegged perfectly. Prima Donna, where's my song? Hit the music. This is like wrestling. Hit the music. We almost had a double dose of Gary Lawless. The lawman rolled by. He said he already joined you on the opening, Sean, so...
and you know what he said, just so you know, I don't know if you know this, the chat room knows this. He said, hey, do I get to be on the Renny and Kenny show? And so we're rebranding, just so you know. We're going to have to get a hold of Richard Medeiros. We're going to have to get him to redesign everything because it is now official. We've become the
Speaking of prima donnas. Speaking of prima donnas.
It's not the Renny, Scott, and Ken show. That's what you should be careful of right now.
Oh, I'm showing a lot of gratitude. I'm like Morgan Barron, buddy. I'm showing a lot of gratitude. Just happy to be on the show.
What we should be doing here at this stage is giving a shout out to the Kenny and Renny OGs, our good friends at the Johnston Group, because you guys picked some great got you covered plays here. But you won't find 2 businesses with the same challenges, but you will find 30,000 businesses with Chambers Plan employee benefits, proudly administered by our friends at Johnston Group. Chambers Plan is Canada's #1 plan for employee benefits because it evolves with the way you work and live. The plan is run as a not-for-profit designed specifically to support small businesses, and its unique pooling strategy keeps rates stable, so you won't have any surprises at your next renewal. Chambers Plan now comes with professional consulting on key financial, legal, and HR issues, and teledoc telemedicine services are included with every health option. See how Chambers Plan can benefit your business by visiting chamberplan.ca. Ken, I think you should give Sweet Lou a shout out before we go too far as well, just because it's getting to be that time in the show.
No problem at all. For all the folks who have realty needs that they would like to have met, whether you're buying, selling, curious what the house on the corner is going for, or curious about moving to another neighborhood, you can contact Lou Ferlin at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty. 204-791-9971 or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. And his website with all of his listings, louferlin.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this podcast, for which we are eternally grateful.
Ken, Scott, I'm going to keep the rapid fire going. We've heard some good music. Let's keep it rolling. Let's make this a Sean's Headband version of the Kenny and Renny Show. I love telling the behind the scenes stories. Did so on Hustler's show the other day. It was actually a lot of fun to kind of share some of the behind the scenes things that were happening. I thought this was a funny one. Gary Galley, John Bartlett, and a whole bunch of the crew. I think you've heard me talk about Scott Butter Carruthers, who is the producer of this series. Gord Tate, who produces a lot of the games that you saw this series and is down working on this. A whole bunch of the crew were at the Westin where we're staying and hanging around the pool. And Johnny Anderson, whose brother you will often see, James Anderson, in the chat room often. Johnny Anderson is one of the top 5 cameramen who shoot hockey in the entire world. He's down on this series, working it, doing a great job of it. He comes strolling down in front of everybody at the pool wearing a Sean's Headband shirt. And it was
nice.
Ken, we could have thrown up a K&R clothing shop in that moment and sold. We could have made $1 million, my friend. What a missed opportunity! Everyone
made our first $1 million.
Thanks to Hey, I'll tell you this. Johnny Anderson is. We all have the people, and I like these stories. So if they ever pop up, Scotty, this includes you. But the opportunities to talk about the people who helped you get where you've got in your career. I think it's important to shout that kind of stuff from the rooftops. I used to be the late night news host, and also before that, a reporter at CBC News here in Manitoba. Johnny Anderson is a guy I started working with there. I do not get to this spot in my career if it's not because of John Anderson. He is so massively respected across the Canadian sports media landscape. And he's one of those kind of guys who tries to open up opportunities for people he works with. He has spent so much of the last 10, 14 years trying to open up doors for me. I'm eternally grateful for it. Just one of the greatest guys in the world. And I'm so lucky to call him a friend and a colleague. And it's been a lot of fun being down here with him. Just wanted to give him a shout out. Ken, we never got your breakdown of the game. I know you've touched on it a little bit here, but where do you think things went wrong for the Jets after the first period?
Oh, this is very simple, Sean. It's a cumulative effect of too many long shifts, and the longest of the long shifts ended up catching the Jets in a serious pickle. 157 for Scheifele, 157 for Dubois, 135 for Pionk, and 135 for Brendan Dillon. And the inability... Brendan Dillon had it on the tape of Mark Scheifele on that left wing boards, and he couldn't get the puck past the defenseman. And was there some bad luck involved on the Karlsson goal? For sure, it was a bouncing puck in front. Nobody could find it, but a set of 4 guys out of the 5 were on for way too long, and as a result, sorry, 132 for the 2D men, yes,
for the 2D men, and 157 each for Dubois.
Sorry. Yeah, so I mean, like that can't. I mean, I understand it's part of hockey and it happened, but that puck's got to get out. And of course, Mark tried to do it. It's not. So this is what we talked about, guys. Mark moving to the wing. Mark is not in a position very often to be along the boards and making that type of a play. And now he's doing it on his off wing. Some bad luck there too, sure, but like that's a play that's got to be made. That puck has got to get out, even if it's icing. It's got to get out. So the fact that Jets were unable to clear the zone, then I think they had a chance or two with the bouncing pucks in front of the net. Honestly, I said in my column that I just filed, it's far too simplistic to say that one shift changed the momentum of this series, of the game, and potentially the series, but it had a massive impact in terms of disrupting the flow of the game for the Winnipeg forward group. Up to that point, they were doing a nice job. They were mostly rolling 4 lines. They had control of the game. Was Vegas starting to push? Sure. They had 20 shots on goal in the second period. So, yes, they were starting to push. But the Jets not getting that change and not getting the puck out of the zone, that was a game the Jets had ample opportunity to get that game to 2-0 on several chances. And their inability to extend the lead cost them the game. There is no way around it. Laurent Brossoit responded nicely. I don't think he was at fault in game 1. I think that, sure, they got a late empty net goal and they got a 5th goal on the power play in garbage time, but I didn't see goaltending being a big factor in game 1. But Brossoit did his job in game 2. He had 31 saves on this night. Connor Hellebuyck still had 34.
He was a little shaky in game 1, no?
Well, which goal didn't you like? I mean, the Wheeler goal, there's 5 people in front of the net.
The Wheeler goal is the only one not to like.
But you gotta save that, right? Sorry? You gotta keep the legs closed on that one, right? I mean, that's Like that's the only
It's
issue.
a
with
high
that
slot
goal.
backhand through 3 people. I mean, would you like to have it closed? Sure, but
I think you would expect to have.
it's not
that
a muffin.
goal
I
in
mean, it's
most
not a
goalies.
softie. Is it? Okay, so one
That-
questionable.
that's a goal that
Scott,
has to
one
be
questionable
saved in the
goal out of
playoffs.
5.
Sure.
I don't
yeah.
think goaltending was a factor. Did I think he played his best? No. There's
He had
two
some issues that didn't turn into goals in that game too, right? I mean, I guess I was looking at more of the overall, not just the goals, but a couple of those chaotic.
That's how he looks. I mean, I've watched his games during the year. That's how he looked. Today, was he more steady in the net? For sure.
It was. I think he got over that kind of first game rust just like Eichel did. So yeah.
I mean, it was also his first playoff start. So
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Like
I think he was a little bit jazzed for sure. I just don't think that goaltending was their team generated 17 shots on goal and 2 in the third. I don't see goaltending as being, and Hellebuck was good early, but he wasn't tested. So,
Right.
but yeah, sure, Brady, you're right. Like Scotty said, there were a few leaky plays where he looked a little bit shaky, but you could have said that again in the game today. But well, Kyle Connor danced around Alex Pietrangelo, and where did LB go? Kyle went to the backhand and he went with them. So that inability to get to 2-0 was costly for the Jets. And when they gave up the equalizer after being on the ice for too long, it cost them. And that sort of swung the game for me, Sean. I mean, yes, the Jets pushed a little bit, but and this is also very simple. In Game 1, the Jets' top line was excellent. In Game 2, Vegas's best players were their best players, and the Jets' best players were,
Not.
Kyle Connor had I don't even know what the final is. He had 8 shots on net through
That was
30,
in the
not even
first
30
period,
minutes.
wasn't it? Yeah,
So
mostly.
he finished with only 8 shots and 11 attempts. This is very simple. The Top Guns for Vegas outplayed the Jets' best players. Yes, they got another contribution from the fourth line. They got another power play goal from the second unit. But at 5-on-5, Vegas's Top Guns were better, and there's no arguing that whatsoever. If we had said going into the series the Jets would split the first 2 games, they would take that 100 times out of 100. So, I mean, the Jets are in a good spot. Did they have a chance to go up 2-0 and fail on the opportunity? Yes, but I don't think that it's a panic at the disco situation for the Jets either, because they're in a decent spot. But like Brick Bonus has said, Sean, to everybody who is within earshot for the last 2 days, every win in the series gets harder. And now at 1-1, the series gets harder.
Yeah.
No doubt. Before we go too far, I just wanted to address Lauren Brossoit in that first game. I thought the Wheeler goal was leaky, no doubt about it. I do think that Nemesnikov was right in his kitchen in a good spot, and this is one of those things where if you want to get leaky goals from goaltenders, what you do is you stick a guy right in his face and just naturally draws their attention away. The other part of that is backhands are hard to read, right? Blake doesn't look like he's trying to go 5-hole. I think the way that his stick looks, he looks like he's trying to go to the left side of the net top corner, and the reason the 5-hole opens up is because Brossoit is lifting up to try and stop the puck up there, and it instead goes the other direction. I think what we've seen from Lauren Brossoit in 2 of these games, I do remember saying this, I don't know who I was talking to, or if this was on the Jeff Merrick show, or if I talked maybe this was on WST, but I would have thought it was a big mistake if the Vegas Golden Knights put Lauren Brossoit on a short leash or held him responsible for anything that happened in that first game. I thought he was one of their better players and battled harder than maybe any other Vegas Golden Knight player on the ice in that first game. I don't think you guys are going far enough in your comments about him today. Lauren Brossoit outdueled Connor Hellebuck in this game. It needs to be said. These are 2 goaltenders who went out. You take a look at some of the you look at some of the stops that were made. I mean, both of them get scored on when it comes to a deflected goal. That both of them get scored on top corner with the first goal, the William Karlsson goal, is a tough one to stop because it's one of those situations where the puck is sitting there and you don't really know who's going to get it. And all of a sudden, by the time the one guy gets it, boom, it's in the back of the net. It's tricky. I'm not saying I thought Hellebuck had a bad night, but Lauren Brossoit fought tonight. He stopped a lot of really, really good opportunities. Lauren Brossoit went toe-to-toe with Connor Hellebuck tonight. And let's be honest, he outdueled him. He outdueled Connor Hellebuck in this game. Give credit where it's due. Lauren Brossoit has walked out of the AHL. He's walked in, helped secure the first place seed for the Vegas Golden Knights. He battled and showed up in the first game of this series when the rest of his team didn't. And then he didn't allow that. Hey, we were talking about this. Ken, I think you touched on it. But the idea that if Laurent Brossoit would have come into this game and allowed a couple softies or allowed Kyle Connor to score on that game or that goal where he dangled everybody and went in, and all of a sudden it was down, like some people are suggesting it should have been 3-0 or something like that going into the first period, we are probably talking right now about a goaltending controversy and the Vegas Golden Knights not being able to figure this out. The Winnipeg Jets threw everything they had at Laurent Brossoit in that first period, and everyone wants to talk all the time about, well, Connor Hellebuyck last game, he didn't have a lot, but he made timely saves. Laurent Brossoit showed up, made timely saves, kept his team in this game, kept them on life support until they were ready to wake up. There is no other way to say this. You are just refusing to look at reality if you don't take a look at this and say that Laurent Brossoit would do a Connor Hellebuyck on this night.
That's a statement.
I hated the game winner. Like, that's got to be caught. Like, that it's a wrist shot from the blue line. That's got to be caught before Stevenson jumps on it. It's got to be caught.
And so here's it.
I disagree. I have a tough time with that one.
No, hold on. Let me go with this. Because Ken is 100% right here, and I'm glad he finally did it because he's not worried anymore because he believes he's got the MVP conversation locked up, so he's able to say this. But that is a terrible rebound.
Yes.
That is a puck that is going.
Yes.
Oh my goodness,
Scotty! It's a wrister from the blue line, man.
It's a wrister that goes to his glove on the opposite side of the net, and he redirects it into the most dangerous place on the ice and puts a pizza right down in the slot with the player right there in a wide open net. People want to go and they want to get upset at Mark Scheifele in this situation. He's taken a battering in the chat room about this, and rightfully so, because as Ken always says, and he's right to say so, if you don't have the guy's stick, you don't have the guy. So he owns a part of that. But all the people in the chat room who are so quick and so fast to call out Mark Scheifele in a situation like this, if you're not calling out Connor Hellebuyck for putting a terrible rebound in the worst possible spot at that time, you're not looking at this critically. You are sitting there and you're choosing a player and saying Connor Hellebuyck can do no wrong, Mark Scheifele can do no right. Wake up in that situation. That is a terrible rebound at that moment in the game. And as Kenny points out, that's the game winner.
But the problem is, Sean, when you look at that shot where it hits Hellebuyck, and I don't care if it's a point shot, it was a hard shot, heavy shot from the point. And what happens is it catches them literally right here. So you're trying as a goaltender to corral that puck. That's a hard puck to corral, right? Because the guys
they're all hard pucks to corral.
I get it, Sean. But when you're trying to handcuff a goalie with that shot. And that's exactly what he did, because you're looking right over the shoulder between the glove and the head, and that shot was heading that direction. It wasn't high enough to do it, but it hits him here, and there's no way he's going to be able to catch that, because the way that it rips off the pads and the way that pads. If you talk to goalies these days, talk to any goalie in the NHL.
Tico Napoli's a goalie.
Okay, talk to any goalie who has high-end equipment, and maybe Tico Napoli does. But the idea of where these shots coming off the pad so hard and off the chest protector, that's what happens with all the padding that they're wearing these days. It comes off hot, and it's difficult. It's difficult at that point to make that catch and that kind of thing because it doesn't die in his pads. It comes rifling off his pads, and so you have to take. That's the critical part of this, Sean.
Blocker it into the corner if you can't catch it.
You can't. What do you blocker into Kenny? It was
Scott. He's got to have it, man. That's got to be stopped.
Going at his glove, Kenny. It wasn't going at his blocker. You can't blocker into the corner when it's over. We want him to do this. Like this
it's a wrist shot, man. You got to have the save there. I'm sorry. Let's move on.
Kenny, Kenny, hold on. Just hold on a sec, guys. We're down in Vegas. I slipped away to a Cirque du Soleil show, Kenny. I'm sorry. I didn't tell you about it. Slipped away to a Cirque du Soleil show. And I'm not sure I saw a contortion artist work as hard at doing that than I just saw Scott Billick try to contort that argument that he did. I never went to this. I'd never go to the Cirque without you, Kenny. I'd never do that.
Hellebuyck is excellent. He's the reason the Jets are here, but I didn't like the goal. That's all. It's simple. I didn't like the goal.
The goal because Mark Scheifele isn't where he needs to be on that.
He lost the face-off and he lost inside position, but Why? How is he expecting that to land there?
I think you're you're not, but you always have to be expecting that a shot might rebound off your goaltender somewhere. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, he's got the position. Listen, I agree with you. He has to own a part of that, but suggesting that this is what I'm saying. This is the argument I've tried to make. This is an argument I've tried to make for a long time. And Kenny, let's do this right now. I concede to Ken Wiebe the argument that we had all year. Connor Hellebuyck, mark it down, everybody. Get ready for this. Connor Hellebuyck, he was the Jets MVP this year. I told Kenny weeks ago that I was going to do this. I just wanted to string this along for a while. My argument down the stretch was that Josh Morrissey, I thought part of what made him the MVP candidate in my mind was the idea that I thought he was dragging this team along when they were at their lowest. At some point, I think that leader became Adam Lowry down the stretch. And because of that, my vote had to change, because the idea that not only was he in the Norris conversation, that he was scoring a lot of goals for this team, all those different things, but the leadership component of what Josh Morrissey was getting out of the Winnipeg Jets was a huge part of why I had him as my MVP. Adam Lowry, in my mind, surpassed him down the stretch. I think that this team has followed Adam Lowry, so I had to remove that component, and by removing that component, it became clear to me Connor Hellebuyck was the MVP. But I will say this time and time again, I think it happens in Jets world, I think it happens in our chat room, I think it happens with the both of you, I think it happens with everyone I talk to in this city. There's this Connor Hellebuyck can do no wrong mindset at every single turn, where every goal that he allows couldn't have possibly been stopped. Every bad rebound he gives up couldn't have possibly gone in any other spot other than sitting down like a pizza in front of a wide open net. People have to drop this. If you are going to call out Mark Scheifele and suggest that he was in the wrong spot to defend that play, which he was in the wrong spot, and you're right to say so, at least have the balls to call out the equal mistake in that situation. The puck is never in that spot if the goaltender handles it in the proper way. And this is what I get. Every single time I look at the chat room and I see people who refuse to point out the very few instances that Connor Hellebuyck doesn't do right, it just tells me I can't take what they're saying seriously. People need to be able to say, call a spade on this night. I still see people bending over backwards. There's people who are doing backflips right now trying to say that Connor Hellebuyck was better than Laurent Brossoit in this game. Give Laurent Brossoit his due. This is a guy who fought his way to stay in the NHL, fought his way to get back in the NHL, is going out and fighting his life out against the guy that by all rights knows he's a better goaltender than him. He will never reach that guy, and went out and out-dueled him tonight. Come on, people. Get out. Pull your heads out. Take the blue sunglasses off and admit it tonight. Connor Hellebuyck got into a goaltending duel. The shots weren't that far off. One team was dominant at one point. One team was dominant at the other. Connor Hellebuyck lost the goaltender's duel tonight. It doesn't hurt you. Well, it probably hurts a lot of people to say it, but get out right and see what is happening. Connor Hellebuyck lost that duel tonight.
I'm waving the white flag here. I'm not going to win here. But Sean fell on the sword to win the war. That's what he did there. So just remember.
It was coming. I needed the right
lied
time.
all year to
he's been waiting.
being the MVP.
I needed the sympathy
and now
vote.
you want them to believe you on this.
No, I never lied. Morrissey was my guy right and down till the very end. But at some point, like I said, and I think it turned around. Here's where I think it turned. You guys tell me if you agree, because I do think it's an important conversation. I think the Nashville game that they played down in Nashville, when Lowry scores the goal to tie up that game and send it to overtime, I think from that game and that point on, I think Lowry was the old Captain Phillips, I'm the captain now situation. That was my I'm the captain now moment, and you could see it as it's going right now. Like, Adam Lowry is everything right now. He'll be the guy who goes out and fights for his team. He's the guy who hits. He's the guy who grinds you down. He's the guy who gives you everything on every single play. And he's the Jets' best forward right now when it comes to scoring goals and producing points. Adam Lowry is absolutely everything to this team, and because of that, because of the component with Josh Morrissey, that was the leadership component that I thought he was creating. Because people know my argument about Connor Hellebuyck, and that I think Connor Hellebuyck can be great, and when he's great, the rest of the Jets say we don't have to be great. Let's go to sleep. There's something to be said about a guy who says, I'm great, and you need to come with me and be great. Adam Lowry has done that right now. I think everything that we see about the Jets right now that is good and towards the Rick Bowness blueprint has Adam Lowry's thumbprints all over it, and has Adam Lowry saying to his teammates, I'm going here, you're following, let's go.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Kenny.
Lowry's doing a great job, no doubt. And I mean, this is not a one-man. No one's blaming Hellebuyck for the loss here. Just Brossoit deserves some credit for bouncing
there
back.
You go.
The Jets.
I agree.
Yeah,
buddy, I said it at the beginning that I didn't like the game-winning goal. Hellebuyck gave up 5. I mean, you're not going to win a lot of playoff games if you give up 5 goals. Those are facts. I mean, no one's hanging this on him. Lots of guys had tough nights. Neil Pionk was on for 4 even strength goals against. It was a rough night for Neil Pionk. Scheifele was on the wrong side of the defensive side of battle for 3 of the goals. So, I mean, that's not good enough. The Vegas Stars were better. And, in a lot of ways, like you said, Sean, in a game where Brossoit gave up 2 and Hellebuyck gave up 5, the goaltending battle was won by Vegas. So, even Steven after 2, and now what we've said so often down the stretch, now let's find out what the Jets are made of. They had a chance to go up 2-0. They could not do that. Now they're even. It's a best of 5. They're going home. Whiteout is coming. Let's see how the Jets play when they have the matchup game. Because, Sean, you talked with Jeff today about the matchup game, the chess match. What happened today? Bruce Cassidy got Jack Eichel away from Adam Lowry, and it's no surprise that line was great.
Yes.
So that was a big adjustment in the game.
It's the last thing that we should talk about before we shut this down. This is the time of year I've been excited about this. I've said this about Rick Bowness before. Bruce Cassidy, we know from what he's done in the past, is capable of this. Both these coaches are very, very good at making in-series adjustments to change things. And it's funny because at the beginning of the game, guys, you wouldn't have seen it. I'm not sure how many people saw it, but I did a pre-game interview with Bruce Cassidy. And my first question to him was, how much of this performance in game 2 is on the coaching staff and your ability to game plan for what the Winnipeg Jets did to you in game 1? I can't remember the last time I've got to ask a coaching staff that question, because basically what I was asking was, your game plan got pumped in game 1, right? So do you have a different game plan, or are you going to say that this is just a player's execution thing? Bruce Cassidy said, we need to, as a coaching staff, own a big part of what happened in game 1 and how our players came out and competed. But to your point, Ken, and this is why the playoffs are so interesting. This is why Winnipeg Jets fans never should have thought this is just going to be easier. We're going to win every period and this series is over, is because these are the kind of coaches that if they have their players' ears and if their players are listening, they know how to make the kind of tweaks that can turn the tide back in their favor. It took Bruce Cassidy, I think, a little bit longer. Like, it should have happened sometime in, maybe the second period of game 1, or at least showed a little bit of a push in the third period of game 1. Definitely should have happened by the first period of game 2. But when he finally got his team in sync, they had an answer that the Jets never had an answer to. We're going to see now if Rick Bowness is going to be able to turn the tide in the other direction with some tweaks going back in their direction.
Yeah, and quick one, Hellebuyck loves afternoon games, so I would imagine that he will be very sharp on Saturday afternoon. Scotty, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I wonder, because of how game 1 started and you're already down, you get down 2-0 in the second period. I mean, did the matchup game just go out the window at that point? Because they changed the line, and then you're trying to. Oh, geez. But I just wonder, in that game, the game kind of got away from Bruce Cassidy in terms of what he could do. Like, aren't you not just forced at that point to give up the matchup game and start going after and loading up your top line as they did in that game and trying to go after and trying to find a goal? Like, tonight, they didn't really have to do that. You're only down 1-0, even though it was a bad, first period. and then they come out and they score, in the first 6 minutes of that, so you can keep it going. Maybe he just stayed with it longer tonight than, based on the game situation. But I think, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what you think, Kenny. You were there, but I just thought that he didn't really have much of a choice to get away, to stick with the line matching in game one, because of, they were chasing the game, and when you're chasing the game, you're trying to find a spark, and by trying to find the spark, they had to play their top lines and the reconfigured lines against whatever Winnipeg was putting out there, because you need your best players to beat Winnipeg's best players at that point, and they just weren't capable of doing it.
Yeah, I don't agree. I would have said when you're down 2-0, it would give you even more reason to stay away from the matchup. I understand coaches are very stubborn at times, and they see the best defensive forwards all the time. So you're going to show faith in your guy. But in that situation, if I'm Bruce, I'm putting him out against the Scheifele line or another line that would be much more of a more beneficial matchup. But I mean, hey, the matchup game is classic, right? So here's the other part of it. Today, when the Jets scored their goal, it came after a TV timeout, and Rick put the fourth line out against Chandler Stevenson and Mark Stone. And I looked over to Mike McIntyre, and I'm like, what's happening here? I didn't see that as a beneficial matchup. I thought the fourth line played well. And next thing you know, they go the other way, and the fourth line scores against that line. So, hey, the coaches always know better than what we're doing. But, I mean, trying to dig into the details is what we're trying to do here. So, I don't think that Bruce will be, Scotty, to your point, on Saturday, I don't think Bruce wants to pull Jack Eichel's line off every time Lowry goes on the ice, because then those top line guys can't get into a rhythm. Then it gets disruptive, like what you were talking about. So I just think that, in that situation, now you welcome it. But in that last game, I think it would have been more important to try to get him out against other guys. But sometimes you don't want to run the risk of, skipping a turn or two. Now that line's not in rhithm either.
And that's the thing. I think that's what you're getting at. That's kind of what I'm saying, right? Like, I just think that he was too. I don't know if stubborn was. I thought he was maybe too reactive or too overreactive to what the game was. But at the same time, you look back at that game one. Vegas looked nothing like the team that played the final 40 minutes. So it also different set of circumstances for sure. Yeah.
I just thought. I found the Helly stuff hilarious in that people just keep making the point for me that I just tried to make, that there's just there it is impossible for a good chunk of Jets Nation to even entertain the thought that Hellebuck is human, that he could possibly make a mistake, because I love this conversation that we've had, and Patrick Guazad, or whatever his name is, comes out of this and says, bottom line, none of the goals tonight were Helly's fault, in my humble opinion. I just want to say, Patrick, just copy and save this so that you could just throw it into the chat room every single time we make even a hint or a suggestion that Connor Hellebuck allowed a goal that he shouldn't have stopped. This is exactly what I'm talking about. There's a segment of people out there who think that it is impossible for a goal that has been allowed on Connor Hellebuck to have been stoppable. If it was scored on Connor Hellebuck, it would have been scored on every other goaltender, not only in the league right now, but in the history of the game. Copy, paste this. You're going to need it for a long time going forward.
Sean, we were at a game 2. Andrei Vasilevsky gave up 7 last year. He gave up 7 today. It's not diminishing the folklore of Andrei Vasilevsky and being a clutch goalie. Sometimes excellent goalies give up goals. That's life. It's a hard league.
I just think you guys are wrong on the way that goal is given up. That's all. Talk to what's his name in Vancouver. He'll let you know.
I'm going to ask Kevin Woodley if he thought a wrist shot from the blue line should have been stopped. I would be more than happy to do so.
You can't. See,
Scotty, this conversation is over. I'm sorry.
It's only over
because it's 1:15 into the show.
We got to go. It's time for us to go, but before we
quick one. What about Ehlers? Ehlers, do we think he will play Saturday or no? What is our best guess here? Sorry.
I have no idea. They brought him on the trip. I can tell you this right now, behind the scenes, there was not an understanding of whether or not Nick Ehlers was even going to take the pregame skate. So we were told at the beginning of the day here that he would be a game time decision. When it came down to it behind the scenes, the Jets never expected him to play. They wouldn't say that he wouldn't take the morning skate. So I don't know how close they are. I know that he's close enough that they thought he could take the pregame skate, but they didn't necessarily know that was going to translate to him playing. So I feel like he's close. I don't think he would have been on this trip if it wasn't close and if they thought there wasn't a chance of him playing. But without knowing the nature of the injury and what's happening, I don't think any of us really have any idea. I don't even think Nikolai Ehlers clearly has an idea if he'll be playing in the next game or not, because I think Nick Ehlers truly thought he'd be playing in game 1 of this series, and he's not. So there's a doctor out there that knows this information. None of the rest of us do. I don't think their head coach knows that. If this was an answerable question, and I don't think it is, I don't think it would be us who are answering it. Ken?
Yeah, I like I said, I would have bet. I'm not a gambler. I would have bet a significant portion that Ehlers would be in game 1. I would have bet 0 in game 2. I did not expect him to play today. As for game 3, I have no idea. The Jets are not going to skate tomorrow. They're traveling tomorrow. They will not skate Saturday morning. So Nikolai Ehlers didn't skate today. So unless he skated on his own.
Ehlers skates tomorrow, though, on his own once they get back. Don't you think? Like, would he put in a skate to see?
I've seen him skating, Scott. I don't think it has it's got nothing to do with his legs. So it's an upper body issue of some kind. It's not a concussion. No. Yeah. He needs some kind of medical clearance, or maybe he needs some range of motion. Sean, would that be the? I mean, if it's shoulder or collarbone, would it not be range of motion?
Here would be my suggestion. I don't know that it's range of motion. I don't know that it's him not being able to play. I think the concern is if you put him in, he's susceptible to further injury. I think they want him more locked down in a situation where they think that he can take contact better, because we saw in this series it's starting to why would you risk after, I think game 1 played into this. Why would you risk after winning game 1 throwing a player in a little bit early just to get him in the lineup?
Well, for the very reason Rick Bowness says.
And have him take contact and be lost for the playoffs to this team. To me, that's too big of a risk. I think you need to put a guy in knowing that he's going to be able to, at the very least, not be knocked out of the playoffs again by contact. And to me, I would argue that that's what's holding it up at this stage.
I would also argue, if you wait too long, the Jets could be out of the playoffs. So, and he's one of their best players,
right? And if Rick Bowness says that winning game 2 is harder than 1 and 3 is harder than 2 and all that, I mean, don't you want him in the lineup? I mean, it's the playoffs. That's the different thing. So, to me, if it's just about, well, he might get more injured or might not. I mean, isn't that the case for a lot of guys who just play through a lot of games? I don't know. And so, I mean, whatever Kevin Stenlund had, I assume Kevin Stenlund's still playing through whatever he had. Maybe it is. Maybe they are more concerned about, given the way that Nick Ehlers' season has gone, even though a sports hernia is completely different than, whatever he's dealing with upper body. I wonder if it has a little bit to do with neck or whiplash or stiffness or something like that more than anything. But I don't know. I mean, you guys have been on the ground. I haven't seen him walking around. I don't know.
No, he's skating. He's absolutely flying. I've never seen him skate faster, to be honest.
So then what's keeping him out? That's all I'm asking. Is other than
it's been explored. We got a flight. Yeah. We got to get to. We got to get in that direction. I wanted to bring this up. Baby Yoda said Oilers win their second game, Leafs win their second game, Colorado wins their second game, Dallas wins their second game. I guess the only team that didn't go that way is New York. I have to say this. Thankfully, things have turned in a different direction, because we did our playoff picks, Ken, and I don't know if you noticed it, but the playoff teams that I chose, 7 out of 8 lost their first games. I was looking pretty bad there. I will tell you this, and I will always tell you this. I take no pride or insult when people call out my picks, because I think the fact of the matter is, if all of us knew what we were doing to the degree when it came to picks, that we should be insulted by that, we would be living down here in Vegas and making our living betting off the teams that we very much knew were going to be winning.
Carolina is also up 2-0.
There you go. Oh, gotta give a shout out because it's time to throw a spotlight on the comments that choose to stand out for the Home Field Dig Deeper Award. That today is going to go to Trisha Snyder, who says, we swept Edmonton being the underdogs 2 years ago, then went flat. Clawing away at games is not always a bad thing. I think that's where the Winnipeg Jets are at this point right now. I think they went flat in those last two periods, and the answer to it is clawing back in and trying to get right back to where you were. Will the Winnipeg Jets do it in the next game? That's the big question we have sitting in front of us. But thank you so much, Trisha, for your winning comment. And just like Trisha, Homefield is always going to dig deeper to find the best marketing solution for your company. Find out how at myhomefield.ca. Trisha, you know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name and an email, and I will send you your voucher for the Kenny and Renny trunk shovel, Kenny and Renny / Homefield trunk shovel, which you're going to need all over again because it's snowing in Manitoba and the whiteout is truly coming in every single literal way to the city of Winnipeg. Scott, thank you so much for joining me. You did an awesome job tonight, even if you were way off on your assessment of Connor Hellebuck's rebound. Ken, you did a great job as usual. Our chat room always rocking it as they always do, and I wanted to say this before we shut this down. If you appreciate the conversations happening in these spaces, please appreciate and support our sponsors who fight to keep those conversations going in these spaces. For us, that's Vittorio Rossi, the Trans-Canada Brewing Company, Johnston Group, Lou Ferlin, and of course, Homefield. Thank you so much to them. Thank you so much to all of you. It's getting interesting, everybody. Let's reconvene and talk about it after Game 3, the first game of the whiteout for the 2023 NHL playoffs. It is going to be a lot of fun. We will see you all after that.
The Kenny and Renny Show is brought to you by Homefield, Cambrian Credit Union, Lou Ferlin, Trans-Canada Brewing, Vittorio Rossi, and Johnston Group.